We now come on to the statement on Ukraine. We have the Minister Luke Pollard. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's day 1030 of Putin's illegal full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and I would like to update the House on the current situation in Ukraine. Ukrainians are approaching their third Christmas since Putin launched his illegal full-scale assault. Russian forces are over 1,000 days into a war Putin thought would be over in less than a week. The Ukrainian people have paid a horrendous price for Putin's aggression, and it is testament to their grit, determination and courage that they have mounted such a heroic defence of their country. The UK has stood with Ukraine since day one. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I can confirm to the House that yesterday the Defence Secretary travelled to Kyiv to meet his Ukrainian counterpart, Defence Minister Umerov, to discuss a joint plan for 2025 and underline the UK's commitment to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. It might be useful for the House if I provide an operational update. According to our latest defence intelligence insights, the front line remains unstable. Russian forces continue to conduct attacks and advances at several locations along the front in eastern Ukraine and have made accelerating gains in recent months in central Donetsk Oblast. The conflict is currently classed as attritional and it is brutal. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is also appropriate for me to confirm to the House that North Korean troops are currently engaged in offensive combat operations in Russia's Kursk Oblast, where around 11,000 DPRK troops have been deployed. Our assessment is it is highly likely that they have sustained significant combat casualties whilst only achieving limited tactical gains. Our assessments further indicate there have been over 750,000 Russian casualties since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, with the grim milestone of 1 million Russians dead and wounded likely to be reached within approximately 6 months. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government is clear that the front line of British and European security runs through Ukraine. Our support for the Ukrainian people is ironclad. Since Russia's full-scale invasion, under successive governments, one of the strengths of the UK approach has been the significant cross-party support from all parties in this House. That has characterised our period in opposition and has continued when we have been in government, and I'm grateful for the party opposite and indeed all parties in this House for their continuing support for Ukraine. Madam Deputy Speaker, in total, the UK has now provided £12.8 billion of assistance to Ukraine, and we remain a leading donor of military equipment. The Prime Minister has committed in person to President Zelensky that the UK will give £3 billion a year of military aid for each year as long as Ukraine needs. 2025 will be a critical year for the war. President Zelensky has laid out his victory plan, built around timely and effective military support, security guarantees, long-term deterrence, and rebuilding Ukraine by unleashing the country's economic potential. And he has spoken of his desire to secure a just peace from a position of strength. So today, I would like to outline to the House how we will step up the UK's international leadership on Ukraine into 2025, including a new £225 million package of military support, which, while in Kyiv, the Defence Secretary pledged and confirmed in his meeting with Defence Minister Umerov, and our 5 priority areas for UK defence support in 2025. First, we will further increase and strengthen Ukraine's military capabilities. Our new £225 million package of military support includes £186 million of key military equipment through the UK-administered International Fund for Ukraine, £92 million to bolster the Ukrainian Navy's fighting power, including advanced reconnaissance drones, the latest generation of uncrewed surface vessels, loitering munitions, and mine countermeasure drones. The package also includes £68 million for air defence equipment, including new radars, decoy land equipment, and cutting-edge counter-drone electronic warfare systems, as well as a £26 million package to provide support and spare parts for previously delivered critical military systems to keep them in the fight. Our stepped-up military support package includes £39 million to deliver 1,000 counter-drone electronic warfare systems, together with respirators and equipment to protect Ukrainian frontline forces. We are also gifting explosive charges to equip more than 90,000 155mm artillery rounds, compatible with the dozens of British Army AS-90 self-propelled artillery guns previously provided by the United Kingdom. Madam Deputy Speaker, Ukraine's frontline is also the frontline of our security. I know the whole House will recognise this latest military support package is firmly in the UK's national security interests, and that it will strengthen the resilience of our own defence industrial base too. Yesterday, the House passed, with total cross-party support, the Financial Assistance to Ukraine Bill. This allows the government to fulfil our commitment to provide Ukraine with an additional £2.26 billion through our contribution to the G7 Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Loan Scheme, which will be repaid using the profits from the immobilised Russian sovereign assets, enabling Ukraine to buy military equipment to defend itself and its freedom against Russian aggression. Taken together, this represents the highest amount of UK military support since the war began. Second, we will continue training Ukraine's armed forces throughout 2025, adding to the 51,000 Ukrainian troops already trained here in the United Kingdom as part of Operation Interflex, the multinational training programme we deliver alongside 12 partner nations. Having met Royal Air Force trained Ukrainian pilots at Operation Interstorm and Ukrainian soldiers trained by the British Army and our partners in trenches dug in the English countryside, I know firsthand the difference our training makes. Each person we train, each Ukrainian we train, is a message to Putin that Ukraine does not stand alone. Madam Deputy Speaker, we will continue to provide the training that Ukraine needs and be flexible to meet their requirements. Third, we will build the UK defence sector in Ukraine, the UK and across Europe, to leave Putin in no doubt that Ukraine is not alone in this fight and there's ability to sustain Ukraine in the fight. In the autumn, I accompanied UK defence companies on a trade mission to Kyiv to discuss opportunities for long-term cooperation that can reinforce Ukraine's defence industry as a powerful deterrent against Russia and a powerful asset for Euro-Atlantic security. This government is also delivering on the Defence Industrial Support Treaty signed with Ukraine in July and has made £3.5 billion of export finance available to buy military capabilities. And we look forward to finalising a series of mutually agreed projects that will simultaneously bolster Ukraine's defences and the UK's defence industrial resilience in due course. Fourth, we will continue to work with allies to step up international support. Let me be again clear to the House that this government will work with Ukraine to progress down its irreversible path towards NATO membership, and working with the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, as well as allies further afield, to increase the tempo of support and impose further costs on Russia. Madam Deputy Speaker, I can confirm that there will be a notable gear shift in January when we commence delivery of tens of thousands of drones through the maritime and drone capability coalitions that the UK is leading with our Norwegian and Latvian partners. Fifth, we will reinforce the cross-government effort to increase pressure on Russia, including close working between the Ministry of Defence and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office to increase diplomatic pressure and sanctions. The MOD is working hand in glove with the FCDO through our recently formed Joint Unit on Ukraine to maximise the impact of UK defence support by starving the Kremlin of the resources it needs to sustain its war effort. We will continue to coordinate these sanctions with like-minded allies around the world to deny Russia's war machine the goods, technologies and revenues it needs to sustain its illegal war. And we will continue to expose Russia's malicious cyber attacks and disinformation efforts and the hostile operations of its intelligence services. Madam Deputy Speaker, as we prepare to return to our constituencies and loved ones over Christmas, I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with all those Ukrainians unable to do so. Many are facing a Christmas and New Year of ongoing assault and aerial bombardment of their front line, their homes, their towns, their cities, and their critical energy infrastructure. 2025 is set to be a critical year of the conflict, and our resolve will not falter. President Zelensky has spoken of his desire for a just peace, and the government is in no doubt that a just and lasting peace is only achievable by strengthening Ukraine's hand. That is why this week, the Defence Secretary in Kyiv and as the Minister at this dispatch box, we have set out how we will increase Ukraine's military capabilities, how we are committed to training thousands more Ukrainian troops, how we will strengthen defence industrial cooperation, how we will harness the support of Ukraine's allies, and how we will increase pressure on Russia. This is the surest route to a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, and I commend this statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Minister, Mark Francois.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I also thank the Minister for providing advance sight of his statement, which we warmly welcome on this side of the House. As the Minister noted, last month marked the grim milestone of the 1,000th day of Russia's second unprovoked and illegal invasion of Ukraine. Ever since Russian troops crossed the border, and even before, we have stood shoulder to shoulder with our Ukrainian friends. Indeed, relative to the size of our army, we have gifted more military equipment to Ukraine than any other NATO partner, including the United States. As well as training the Ukrainians in the UK since 2014, following the first Russian invasion, we provided them with everything from NLAWs through to Challenger main battle tanks and almost all of our AS-90 heavy howitzers. We've also provided Ukraine with Brimstone and Storm Shadow missiles and a very considerable amount of ammunition, everything from small arms to 155mm rounds, as well as hoping to procure other ammunition on their behalf around the globe. When offered a way out of Kyiv immediately after the second Russian invasion in February 2022, President Zelensky defiantly retorted, "I don't need a ride, I need ammunition." Well, we in Britain have subsequently provided quite a bit of it. Even more recently, we provided very high-tech systems such as advanced drones and the Dragonfire anti-drone laser, which we initially procured and which the Ukrainians are putting into service. No one can doubt the commitment of Britain in support of Ukraine, and we're pleased to see that this bipartisan approach continues under this government. But we should not lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, Ukraine is a sovereign nation. Only the Ukrainian people can subsequently determine their own future. So I have 5 specific questions I'd like to ask the Minister relating to his statement. Firstly, as he's aware, we've been training Ukrainian troops in Britain since 2014, initially under Op Orbital and now Op Interflex. A key element of this was training troops to operate NLAWs in sophisticated anti-tank ambushes, a capability vividly demonstrated in video footage shortly after Russian forces crossed the border. Without this critical training, it's no exaggeration to say the Russians might well be having lunch in Kyiv today. With that in mind, what further training does the Minister foresee for Ukrainian troops? What additional support will we provide, and will any of this training now be delivered in-country? Secondly, regarding the £186 million from the International Fund for Ukraine, which we coordinate, how much of that is from the UK and how much is from our allies? What, in other words, is the UK proportion? Third, as the statement specifically referred to the supply of respirators, can the Minister confirm intelligence reports the Russians have now even resorted to limited use of blister agent type chemical weapons in Ukraine? Is that true? Fourth, we've been unwavering in our military, political and diplomatic support for Ukraine, as well as generous in providing equipment and ammunition. However, this does raise concerns about replenishing our own war stocks, as highlighted by the Defence Select Committee, which I served on in the previous Parliament, indeed on that inquiry. 6 months ago, the Chief of the General Staff announced clear objectives to double the lethality of the British Army by 2027 and treble it by the end of the decade. Can the Minister outline what steps are being taken to replenish the UK's war stocks? And more specifically, how does the government plan to achieve CGS's ambitious commitment? Finally, the changes announced today clearly feed into the ongoing Strategic Defence Review. Yet there are emerging media reports the much-anticipated SDR publication may be delayed until June next year to now coincide with the Comprehensive Spending Review. Ministers now appear to be sticking to a mantra: the SDR will be published in the first half of next year, which is commensurate with that timeline. So, with a worsening international situation, and given that the initial conclusions have apparently already been seen by the Defence Secretary and even the Prime Minister, we can't afford 6 months of paralysis by analysis while the government decides how to respond. So, can he end on a positive note and tell the House today when the SDSR will be published and assure us it won't be as late as next June? Slava Ukraine.
Just before I call the Minister, Mr Darling, I can see that you're bobbing. If you stay in the chamber, I'll make sure to call you at an appropriate time. Minister, Luke Pollard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman opposite for his party's continuing support for our friends in Ukraine. He is certainly right that the initial provision of anti-tank weapons made a significant contribution in the early days, and the provision of a whole array of capabilities in every month since enables Ukraine to stay in the fight, which is absolutely essential, and that is why this statement today updates the House on additional military capabilities that we are providing to Ukraine and how we will continue to do so. In respect of his questions that he asked me, the Defence Secretary has already announced that we will be extending Operation Interflex until the end of 2025. This is a good news provision. We've always been clear that we will flex the provision of Interflex training to suit the needs of our Ukrainian friends. And so he's right that there was initial skills trained. We now train in different skills in terms of how that is delivered. As the Defence Secretary has said, we will need to make the training a better fit for what the Ukrainians need. We need to make it easier for Ukrainians to access, and we work with the Ukrainians to help and motivate them, mobilise more recruits. The Right Honourable Gentleman will understand if I don't help Putin by revealing the plans and any conversations that we may be having with our Ukrainian friends, but we will keep the House updated in due course. In relation to the International Fund for Ukraine, it is a really important part of our mix. I'll be able to get the Right Honourable Gentleman the full details on that, and I'll place it in the Library of the House in terms of our share. But can I also place on record our wider support for all our international colleagues who are contributing to that fund? The chemical weapons assessment is held at a high classification, and he will understand if I don't go into the full details of Russian capabilities and any use that they may have had in that situation. But the provision of respirators is a really important part of ensuring that Ukraine's frontline troops are able to better defend themselves. We have a plan to replenish our stocks that will be alongside the Defence Industrial Strategy. The intent was published by the Defence Secretary a few weeks ago, and it will be part of the Strategic Defence Review. And I have to say to the Right Honourable Gentleman that the Strategic Defence Review mantra of it being published in the first half of next year, I'm afraid, is not a new one. It is the existing government position, but I can reassure him that the intent is to publish it in the spring, and the work continues on that. I'm grateful for Lord Robertson and his review team for the thorough work that they are doing. The intent is to make sure that this is not just Labour's defence review. This can be a defence posture that can be supported on a cross-party basis to ensure our national security is strong and we're able to deter aggression and defeat it if necessary.
Defence Select Committee Chair Tanmanjeet Singh, Dhesi.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to the diligent Minister for advance sight of his statement, and it was also good to chat with the Secretary of State upon his return from Ukraine. And I welcome his pledge while there of this £225 million package of support to Ukraine, because as the Minister rightly highlights, Ukraine's front line is the front line of our own security. But can the Minister provide further detail? After the UN Secretary-General's statements last week about turbocharging defence, can he provide further details about discussions had with NATO and other allies, in particular our US friends, and the recent discussions between the Prime Minister and President-elect Trump, about what actual international defence steps are being taken at this critical juncture?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful for my honourable friend for his support for the military package outlined today. The UK government will increase defence spending to 2.5% of our GDP, and a path for that increase will be laid out in due course at a future fiscal event. We will publish the Strategic Defence Review that will set out, perhaps more importantly, what we seek to spend any money on, so we can look at what capabilities we need to develop and how that goes further. We continue, as part of the SDR process, to speak with our NATO allies to make sure that the defence offer that the UK is making is a NATO-first offer, able to be more interoperable and supporting our NATO allies, especially on NATO's eastern flank. And I look forward to being able to speak to his committee about more of that in due course.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson James MacCleary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm just trying to step on the right honourable Jenny here. It is absolutely right that we give our brave Ukrainian allies the support they need to resist Putin's war machine. I'm proud of how our country has stood shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine in defence of freedom and democracy. Yet, with the looming threat of a Trump presidency, America's ongoing commitment to Ukraine looks increasingly uncertain. This should serve as a wake-up call to all of us. If the United States pulls back its support, Europe must step up. The Liberal Democrats want to see the UK take a lead within Europe. This must begin with concrete action, such as seizing frozen Russian assets to bolster Ukraine's defences, which I and others spoke about in this House just yesterday, and reversing the damaging Conservative cuts to our armed forces. Steps that will strengthen both Ukraine's hand and Britain's own security. Robust financial and humanitarian assistance is also vital. Just a few weeks ago, Liberal Democrat Foreign Affairs, Defence and Home Office spokespeople met with a delegation of Ukrainian MPs who stressed the urgent need for ongoing, tangible support. Their message was clear. Europe's role has never been more important, and the Liberal Democrats stand firmly behind these measures. The impending Trump presidency puts the safety of Ukraine and Europe in doubt. Does the Minister agree that it is now time for the UK to take a lead within Europe on defence and security? And will he commit to working with his European counterparts to ensure Ukraine is supported to full strength? The Minister also mentioned Russia's attacks on Ukraine's energy network. Can he outline what work the government is doing to support Ukraine to get the electric generators and solar panels installed across the country to keep it functioning?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful for the honourable gentleman's questions, and certainly if we are seeking to protect anyone in this House, it will certainly be the right honourable Jenny in terms of her position here. He asked a number of questions. It is right that we seek to further strengthen sanctions against Russia. The government has made a number of further developments, around sanctioning the Russian shadow fleet, for instance, seeking to cut off its oil flow, and we are, as the bill yesterday set out, making further steps in legislation around frozen Russian assets. We will continue to support our armed forces. The Strategic Defence Review will set out what the future shape of the armed forces will be, and the path to 2.5% laid out by Treasury colleagues in due course. This is, however, a cross-government approach. And I think his final question about energy infrastructure is a really profound one, because it allows me to be able to echo the words from our colleagues in the Department for Energy and Net Zero, who have provided additional support for Ukraine in terms of their energy infrastructure and their energy production. It is absolutely vital that we continue that support, because it's not just in missiles and ammunition that we need to support Ukraine. It's in the whole provision of support to keep that country going, to keep it in the fight, and to enable its people to get through a tough winter.
Alex Sobel.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to once again commend my honourable friend for his ongoing support for Ukraine and his very important trade visit to Kyiv recently. From that visit, he will know that this war has absolutely advanced military technology, particularly in the area of loitering munitions and anti-UAV technology. I note that we have the Defence Industrial Support Treaty and our own Defence Industrial Strategy. I just want to know what progress we are making, particularly on joint venture Ukrainian defence companies, and basing some of that defence capability here for our own future security and for the security of Ukraine.
Well, can I echo my thanks to the honourable gentleman for his work in support of Ukraine as well, a consistent champion on a cross-party basis as well. It is absolutely right that we seek to improve and grow our technology, especially around drones and in autonomy. It is for that reason that the treaty we signed with Ukraine enables Ukraine to effectively use the UK's Defence Equipment and Support Procurement Agency as their own procurement agency to initiate more contracts quicker, enabling support for not only Ukrainian industry but UK industry to work together to deploy more capabilities faster. And he's absolutely right that this pace of change in Ukraine means that we need to absolutely continue to invest in R&D, continue to learn the lessons, and that's one of the reasons why the Defence Secretary made the announcement of retiring the British Army's Watchkeeper system, a 14-year-old drone, in favour of more modern systems that we hope will be able to be announced in the SDR.
Great opportunity for me to wish the Father of the House Happy Christmas. So,
when Russia cruelly invaded Finland in 1940, she not only took territory with force majeure, but imposed neutrality on that country for 50 years. There was a phrase for it called Finlandisation. So I know our influence is not overwhelming this, but when it comes to the Trump presidency, will he assure me that the government will stiffen the sinews of the Trump presidency and ensure that there's absolutely no question that every war aim of Russia is achieved, namely taking territory and neutralising Ukraine, and therefore we must fast-track NATO membership?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the Father of the House for his question? He's absolutely right that we need to continue our support. It's the reason why from this dispatch box today and from government statements since we came to office that we've made clear that we'll support Ukraine for as long as it takes and support them on their irreversible path to NATO membership. It would be wrong for me to speculate on the policies of the new US administration, but it's certainly true that the safety of the United States, just as the safety of the United Kingdom, relies on Putin not winning in Ukraine. That is the reason why we're continuing our support for our Ukrainian friends, and that when the new administration takes office, further such discussions directly will be able to take place.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I just say how strongly I welcome the statement and how firm the commitment across this House must be to defend Ukraine. Does the Minister agree with me that the cross-party nature of the UK's support has been and will remain a really critical feature of our support for Ukraine as a staunch ally here in the UK?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for that question? I think actually the way that this House has come together on issues about Ukraine, not just in the provision of military equipment, but our diplomatic effort, our support for Ukrainians, is a testament to all parties in this House for making sure that we're putting the national security of ourselves and our friends ahead of any partisan desires. That is a position that I expect this government will continue, and I expect will continue from every single party in this House, because in the gaps in our position is where Putin will seek to prosper, and that is why maintaining cross-party support is something essential for our overall UK approach, and I'm grateful for all right honourable and honourable members in continuing that today.
I believe the previous chair of the all-party group on Ukraine, Sir John Whittingdale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the Minister's confirmation of the government's support for eventual membership of NATO of Ukraine? But as a step along that road, will he look at the UK taking a lead in further integrating Ukraine into the Joint Expeditionary Force?
The Joint Expeditionary Force, or JEF for short, is a really important part of a complementary military alliance with NATO, enabling the beer-drinking nations of Northern Europe, as they often describe, to be able to come together. It is important that that geographical centre point of Northern Europe is maintained, especially in the Baltic Sea and the High North. However, there are discussions around Ukraine learning the lessons for more participation alongside JEF nations, and it's certainly true that many of the JEF nations have been the most forward-leading of all our NATO allies in providing support for Ukraine, and I expect that to continue.
Clive Efford, who will be followed by Steve Darling. Clive Efford.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome my honourable friend's statement, and I was really standing up to urge him onwards and demonstrate my support for the stand that we're taking in support of Ukraine. My thoughts are with the people of Ukraine who are entering their third Christmas in this conflict. Europe has learnt a harsh lesson of dealing with dictators in the past. And does my right honourable friend agree with me that at this time, when there's potential for change in the policy towards Ukraine in America, this is a time when Europe really does need to stand together and make sure that we do not allow Putin to succeed in any way, because the consequences of that for future generations could be very damaging indeed.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his question? It is certainly true that this government will continue to support Ukraine and will continue to encourage more of our NATO allies to spend more in terms of donations to Ukraine, but also to improve their own defences to make sure that we act as a deterrent so the experience of Ukraine is not inflicted on any NATO members as well. The Christmas message of peace and hope is one that I hope more of the Ukrainian people will be able to see going into next year, but it will be a very tough Christmas and New Year for many of them. Let me assure my honourable friend that there will be no change in UK support for Ukraine, whatever happens over the coming year, and we will continue to work closer with our European and NATO allies to make sure that what we are providing, the training that we offer, the support we offer Ukraine, will enable them to stay in the fight and to be in the best possible position for the future.
Darling.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When one reflects on the war in Ukraine, we have now seen the proliferation of drone warfare as never before. I was very much struck by the Minister's statement where he used the word drone repeatedly. It is a massive change to how war is now waged. With a Trump presidency now on the horizon, Europe needs to look to itself and look for its strengths. And one of our strengths is the automobile industry and the component parts that can easily be repurposed in the development of drones for the war in Ukraine. Can the Minister advise us how he is working with European colleagues to enhance that to support Ukraine to the hilt?
Can I thank my fellow Devon MP for his question and for his support for Ukraine? It's certainly right that drones and the increased proliferation of drones is a hallmark of the conflict that we are seeing. Between 500 and 1,000 drones used every single day on the front line is a substantial number, and it is they're being used in an incredibly intense environment of electronic warfare and jamming. That's the reason why we need to make sure we continue to iterate and evolve the support that we can provide to Ukraine, making sure that the drones can fly through EW jamming and reach their targets and reach the ability to project power in those areas. We are continuing to strengthen support for developments not only in Ukrainian drone production, but also in production of drones across the rest of Europe. It's for that reason that we work so closely with the Drone Capability Coalition with our European partners to create that enhanced industrial base, but also learn the lessons of what technology is working, bearing in mind that iteration on the front line means we need to keep adapting and enhancing the drone offer that we make to Ukraine every few months.
David Taylor.
Mr. Speaker, and Merry Christmas to you and the team. I thank the Minister, commend the Minister for the statement, like other members in this House has, and especially the new announcements that have been made today in terms of funding. I also thank the Minister for reminding my constituents and constituents of all of us of the urgent need to support Ukraine, and for reminding us that our national security is very much bound up in the national security of Ukraine. It's fantastic this new money has been announced. I did want to ask if there was any further update from the government on the proceeds of the sale of Chelsea Football Club and the 2.5 billion, because I'm sure the Minister will agree with me that the sooner we can get that money unlocked, the more military and humanitarian support we can unleash.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. The government is working hard to ensure the proceeds of the sale of Chelsea Football Club reach humanitarian causes in Ukraine as soon as possible. The proceeds are currently frozen in a UK bank account until a new independent foundation is established to manage and distribute the money. Officials continue to hold discussions with Mr Abramovich's representatives, experts and international partners, and they will double down on efforts to reach a solution. We are fighting for every inch to ensure that money from Russian assets goes straight back to supporting Ukrainians.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can I also welcome the new funding for Ukraine today and welcome the Minister's statement. With an unstable government in France, with new elections in Germany, with foreign influence operations in the recent Romanian presidential election, and with a new administration in the United States, what recent discussions has the Minister had with NATO colleagues about how NATO will continue to support Ukraine to the very end, to steel its resolve, and to work towards the just peace that he referenced earlier. And briefly on some other NATO members, Denmark, he will know that Denmark's policy on defence for Ukraine is to allow Ukraine to grow its own industrial base. That is being supported by Norway and some other Baltic countries. And I'd be interested, I get the transparency point and I actually support the government on that, but I just wondered if there's any potential, coming back to an earlier question, of joint ventures to allow Ukraine to grow its own industrial base too.
Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and it's certainly true that in a period where there's more instability on a political level, it is the certainty and stability of the United Kingdom which many of our NATO allies are valuing, and it's for that reason that that we are pushing forwards on our efforts to coordinate more NATO activity. He'll be aware that NATO has stood up a number of additional capabilities in terms of supporting, especially the training functions that Ukraine desperately needs, and we are supporting those efforts wholeheartedly. He's absolutely right that one of the Ukrainian objectives is to create more joint ventures, more the ability to develop and iterate technologies, especially in missiles and drone technology. That is something that has the support of the UK government, and it is for that reason that we've been supporting our Ukrainian friends, not only to do so in country, but also with UK industry at the same time. How we do that is being worked through, and the new treaty that we signed is, I have to say, really beneficial to be able to enable some of that work to take place. But it's certainly true that to keep Ukraine in the fight, we not only need to provide more resources from NATO allies, we need to create the environment where Ukraine can develop more of its resources in country to be used on the front line as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and Merry Christmas to you as well. Can I warmly welcome the statement from the Minister? It demonstrates again the ironclad commitment of this country to the defence of Ukraine. Ministers will have detected the nervousness across the House regarding political changes in January. So can I actually change to a different tack, if I may, which is there are 6 million Ukrainian refugees across Europe, millions of displaced people within the country itself. Will the Minister join me in paying tribute to communities across the United Kingdom that have supported the Ukrainian people, indeed opened their homes in many cases to Ukrainians coming to this country?
Yeah. Can I join him in thanking all those families across the country, in his constituency and everyone here, and including in mine in Plymouth, who have supported the Homes for Ukraine scheme and those Ukrainians getting to safety. 218,600 Ukrainians have arrived in the UK, including just under 160,000 via the Homes for Ukraine scheme as of the 16th of December. And our new Ukraine Permissions Extension scheme will open on the 4th of February 2025, as announced at the end of October. This will provide an additional 18-month permission and access to the same rights and entitlement as the Ukraine schemes currently do. It is really important that as lending support for Ukrainians in Ukraine, we also support those Ukrainians in the United Kingdom, and I thank all those people who are working so hard to ensure the support for all those families in particular that are in the United Kingdom today.
Bernard Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can we be completely realistic that the outcome of this conflict is likely to be determined by President Trump and what he chooses to do? And therefore, it is essential that the British government engages as positively as possible with President Trump and to resist the temptation that somehow his arrival is an invitation for we Europeans to withdraw upon ourselves, into ourselves, with our limited defence capability and our diverse political and foreign policy objectives and varying degrees of willpower to sustain the effort. Can we take the arrival of President Trump as an opportunity to leverage change in whatever field, never underestimating how much the United Kingdom has to offer the United States and how joined up and integrated so many of our defence capabilities are?
Yeah.
Well, can I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question? It's absolutely true that as the United Kingdom provides a bridge across the Atlantic between the United States and Europe in the past, we continue to do so today. We will need to work closely with our NATO allies, including the United States, for whom we have a very close and deep security relationship. And that is the case whoever is in the White House, and we look forward to beginning more of those discussions with the administration once the legal period that stops international discussions that the US has expires at the point of inauguration. Can I just dispute one aspect of the gentleman's question? This war could be determined, could come to an end because of Putin. He could decide to withdraw his troops. He could decide to stop inflicting pain on the Ukrainian people. He could decide to end the war today if he chose to. That is why we must continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, and so they can get the peace and security that their people so are desperately needed.
On Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the latest British military support for Ukraine. I welcome that there is cross-party support in this House and that the civilised world stands united with Ukraine, and long may that continue. Can my honourable friend tell me if he agrees that the most important voices regarding this illegal invasion and how to end it are not ours, are not those of our allies, but they are those of President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people at home and abroad, including in constituencies like mine of Rugby. They have suffered so much due to Russian aggression, and their fortitude and bravery is an inspiration to all of us who value freedom and democracy.
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question? He is certainly right that the courage, grit, determination of the Ukrainian people is something that we should be enormously proud of, and this is for that reason that we continue to support them, because their fight is our fight in this. He's also right when he says the decision on the future of Ukraine is not for the United Kingdom. It is for the Ukrainian people, and it is for the Ukrainian government to decide their future and their objectives in the coming year. It is our job to help strengthen the Ukrainian hands so they are in the best possible position for any outcome in 2025. That's what this statement and the additional military equipment we've announced today seeks to do, and that cross-party support from this House is something that I know is felt in Kyiv. I also know that videos of this House are shared on the front line between Ukrainian soldiers, showing the support of the United Kingdom for their fight. And although I'm not always sure that every video in here is precisely what Ukrainian soldiers on the front line need, what they can take from today's debate is cross-party support to keep them in the fight for as long as it takes for them to secure victory and peace for their people.
Chris Law.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and we on the SNP benches stand united in that cross-party support for Ukraine, and we welcome the package that's been brought forward today. I've got a few specific questions, really. One is, you talked about the profits that have come from the frozen assets. What discussions has been taking place between yourself and EU counterparts, given that there's been quite a few vocal voices about the sale of those assets, which could rapidly accelerate the strength of the Ukrainian forces? Can I ask also a little bit about sanctions? You have more than 50% of components in drones coming from Russia that are directly coming from China, and we have negotiations next month between your own government and China about increasing economic cooperation. And more specifically, we have a loophole in the law just now which allows British shipping and shipping insurers to work outside the UK to deliver gas from Siberia to other parts of the world, which aids and abets Putin in his war of aggression against Ukraine. So I'd like a little bit of update on that, please. Thank you.
Well, can I thank him and his party for their support for Ukraine and for the united front that this House presents and continues to present for Ukraine. The discussion around frozen assets with our European friends is a matter for the Treasury, but I do know that they are continuing conversations to ensure that when the United Kingdom makes a move on particular areas of sanctions or assets, that is replicated by our friends. And indeed, if you look at the sanctions that we have implemented on Russia's shadow fleet, that has been replicated by a huge number of our European and further international allies to make sure that there's no place for that trade. I'm concerned about what the gentleman says, but I know that the Treasury has been working further with the Foreign Office in relation to how we can strengthen those, but I'd be very happy if he were to write to me with the further details on that. In relation to technology coming from further afield, it's not just technology developed in Asia that we need to worry about, it's also technology developed in Iran that goes directly to the front line, that is used by Russian forces to target civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, which is the reason why we're continuing to take action against Iranian weapon transports to Ukraine as well.
Mark Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I start by welcoming the Minister's statement? It is incredibly welcome to see that we still fully support the people of Ukraine and will back them financially for as long as it takes. I have two questions. The first was about the 11,000 North Korean troops he talked about in the Kursk region. He said that they had made little progress, there had been few tactical victories there, but it had come at great cost to them. How did he arrive at that assessment? And does he expect North Korean troops to contribute more in the conflict in future? And the second question I have is, I increasingly find myself in debates with people who ask why Britain is spending this money in Ukraine and why isn't it being spent on Britain. And of course, I use the arguments that many in this House will be familiar with. When you give people like Vladimir Putin what they want, they always come back for more, deal or not. So can the Minister restate at the dispatch box in this place why it is in Britain's direct national interests to ensure that the people of Ukraine win this conflict?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for his questions? It is certainly true that the assessment that we have made of DPRK troops being engaged in combat is a concerning development. We're seeing it is also a dangerous escalation and expansion of Putin's illegal war against Ukraine and further proof that he has no interest in peace. We will continue to monitor what takes place there. He'll understand if I don't go into all the precise collection methods as to how we have come to that assessment, but it is certainly a sign of further Russian weakness that they need to rely on the troops of North Korea in terms of the Kursk Oblast operations that they are undertaking there. In relation to his second question around why it matters, and I would pose a question which is always useful when this: do we think Putin would stop if he wins in Ukraine? And I think we all know the answer, that his illegal war would continue against the Ukrainian people, that his threats against NATO allies, especially those countries on NATO's eastern flank, will continue, and that his malign influence would continue to extend to subversion of democracies, for attacks on critical infrastructure, for cyber attacks to NATO allies, including the United Kingdom. And that is the reason why that we have cross-party unity in our support for Ukraine, because Ukraine's security is the United Kingdom's security.
Ben Obsujecti.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The war in Ukraine has fundamentally changed the nature of warfare in the 21st century. We're now a generation away from the operations that I conducted in Iraq and Afghanistan, or even the conventional warfighting I trained for throughout my time in infantry only a decade or so ago. So, given we've now seen how the use of drones has revolutionised the battle space in Ukraine, and by that I very much mean the handheld, disposable end of the spectrum rather than a platform like Watchkeeper, with the pace of their development necessitating a more agile approach to procurement and development, to what extent are we ensuring that the forthcoming Strategic Defence Review keeps pace with the rapidly evolving nature of the aspect of that of contemporary warfare, given the evolution of this conflict in just 1,000 days is unrecognisable from its initial phases?
Minister.
Can I thank him for his question and for his service to our country? He is right that we are seeing huge changes in the way that war is conducted in Ukraine, but we're also seeing developments in how technology and different skills can be brought together. A few years ago, if you had said that playing on a PlayStation would train you for military combat, I think many in uniform would have not necessarily welcomed that suggestion. But we are seeing gamers in Ukraine take their skills in first-person view drones and apply it to the front line, flying drones through difficult scenarios in support of their freedom. It is precisely those lessons that the SDR is seeking to capture, and we are using the lessons not just from the war in Ukraine, but from experience of Russian malign influence elsewhere around the world to inform the SDR. My ministerial colleague sitting next to me, the Minister for Veterans and People, feels incredibly strongly about drones, shall I put it, and I'm absolutely certain that the SDR will include not only a greater role for drones warfare, a greater role for training in around drones and the modern warfare, but also a greater role for autonomy in all our domains.
Dr. Neil Shastri-Hurst.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement today, and I welcome the announcement for the ongoing military support. But it's also critically important that those who wage Putin's illegal war face the legal consequences for their actions. With that in mind, can the Minister set out what steps the government is taking to support the Ukrainian domestic legal system in ensuring that these cases are prosecuted in their own courts?
Minister.
Can I thank him for his question? He raises a really important issue, the horrendous activities of Russian forces in Ukraine is something that should be subject to the fullest extent of not only domestic but international law as well. The previous government and this government has not only provided military support, economic support, we've also provided legal support, and we are supporting the international effort to seek to prosecute not just Putin, but those people who have prosecuted hideous crimes against the Ukrainian people, especially against Ukrainian civilians. It is an effort that is ongoing, and I would encourage him perhaps to table some written questions to the Attorney General's office, who might be able to provide a more thorough update. But can I reassure him that our support for Ukraine extends across the whole of government, and we will continue to pursue all those responsible for crimes in Ukraine, including up to and including the President of Russia, because we need to be absolutely clear that this illegal, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine must carry consequences, because if it doesn't carry consequences, it will be a green light for other dictators around the world to seek to change the borders and attack people just because they want to. That is not acceptable in an international rules-based system, so we must uphold the law, and that is why the UK effort for people in uniform, civilians that support our armed forces, as well as the lawyers that are seeking to prosecute those crimes, is so essential for the long-term peace and security of Ukraine.
Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, first of all, can I thank the Minister very much for his statement. There's nobody in this House doesn't support what the honourable gentleman has said today, and we thank him very much for that and that commitment. It encourages ourselves as MPs, but encourages my constituents as well. Hailing from a nation that has had to have the most highly trained police in the world, I personally know of multiple ex-RUC and military personnel stationed in Northern Ireland who train other military and police forces across the world. It is right and proper that our forces are able to help our allies, and indeed they should help our allies. But will the Minister confirm that there is no intention for our forces to see direct action in Ukraine, and that our role is that of training and military provision and support? Thank you.
Can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and through him as a Northern Ireland MP, can I thank all those families in Northern Ireland who have welcomed Ukrainians into their homes and continue to support them, and the Ukrainian and the industry in Northern Ireland that's supporting Ukraine. It is the position of the UK government that we do not have and will not provide UK troops in combat roles in Ukraine. However, we will continue to support our Ukrainian friends through the provision of training, through the provision of the military equipment that they need to determine their future. That training in Operation Interflex will continue throughout the entirety of next year, and will continue to flex and adapt to the changing needs of the Ukrainian fight. It is certainly true that Ukraine needs more people on the front line to deter the aggression, and the ability for us to improve and update our training offer alongside our international partners is actually going to be critical for keeping Ukraine in the fight in the months to come.
The best backbench contributor to last, John Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's an honour and a novelty to follow my near neighbour. Thank you very much. The cost of a New Year's dinner in Russia is up over 11%. Interest rates are up. Taxes are up, the ruble is down. This is largely down to the fact that the previous government introduced a punitive range of sanctions against Russia. Can the Minister assure us that the famous military phrase is in all domains, of course, that economic domain is absolutely critical? Can he assure us that we will continue to ramp up that economic pressure as well as the military pressure?
Well, can I thank him for his question? It is absolutely right that, in addition to military support, we use all the levers available to us as a government to be able to put pressure on Putin, the Kremlin, and his illegal war, and that includes economic measures. It is certainly true that Russia is seeking to find ways to circumvent and evade some of the sanctions that have been put in place, not just by the United Kingdom, but by our international allies as well. It's for that reason that the FCDO and the Treasury are updating the sanctions on a regular basis to not only expand them where we see a revenue stream going from activity that directly supports the war, but that we can put further pressure on the Russian economic system. That means staying in the fight for them is a harder and harder choice, because ultimately this war needs to be brought to an end as soon as we can, and our levers, not only military but economic and diplomatic, are essential in being able to bring the pressure to bear on Putin to stop his illegal invasion, to withdraw his troops, and to give all those people in Ukraine who just wish to get on with their lives free from attack, abuse and intimidation by the Russian state a decent future. And let's hope that 2025 brings a better year than 2024 was for our Ukrainian friends.
Well, that concludes the Ukraine statement. I'll give the Minister an opportunity to get to her place before we begin the statement on Syria.